Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Gaslighting the Warfighter with myself, Tim Jensen. We have a very special episode for you today that hits kind of close to home for all of you out there that is consuming and watching these podcasts. And we're talking about CBD and the recent legislation that was packed into the continuing resolution. We have some great guests for you today. It's going to be talking about this. It's very close to home and, the impetus really of driving and creating this market for CBD. Our guest is Paige Figi and Stephanie Focus, nationally recognized advocates for the modern hemp access and the leading figures in the modern CBD movement. You may remember Paige and her work in 2010 specifically towards her daughter Charlotte, who is struggling with a rare form of epilepsy. Her work inspired one of the most important breakthroughs in natural, non-pharmaceutical relief we've ever seen. But now, in 2025, a new federal bill is threatening to shut the door on the very products that kept kids like Charlotte alive and has helped veterans, first responders, and everyday Americans find relief without relying on big pharma. Paige and Stephanie are here to talk about the fight ahead. Welcome to the show, my friends. That was a mouthful to get through.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
It's good to have you guys on the show. Paige, we've been working a lot over the years with the Grunstyle Foundation and the the Coalition for Access Now on a lot of these CBD issues as they've been popping up across the states. We've deployed Will Wisner out to Florida earlier, I believe it was late last year, in the conversation that was happening in Florida. We've done a lot of work here in the state of Texas, Stephanie, which you have been leading a lot of the work here, and talking about that most recently with Dan Patrick, go eat a dick, Dan Patrick, and his advocacy of trying to rip this away from families here in the state of Texas. Both of those were defeated very firmly by the work that you guys were leading, the advocacy there, and generating a wide audience of individuals to get up and fight for these as well. Now we're in a different conversation. There was a bill that was presented earlier this year, HR 5371, that was, going to, really put a different type of legislation on CBD. But what we saw was something play out entirely different, where, Mitch McConnell had snuck in a piece of law or legislation into the continuing resolution that would, open the government over the shutdown that we experienced about a couple of weeks ago, the longest shutdown in modern times, and that was a bit of a loaded gun that was being pointed at the president, who, as you guys know and have clearly pointed out, was really the champion of CBD and bringing some of those bills forward in late 2000s in his first presidency. So here we are in a new day where a $28 billion industry is now being told that they have 1 year to figure things out. You have millions of Americans across the United States that are now in jeopardy of losing this modality that has brought a lot of relief in terms of pain, in terms of epilepsy and reducing those symptoms. Sounds a little bit monstrous to me. Why would they do that at in the midnight hour of trying to get something passed? And then we get some political shenanigans snuck in by the leader of the Republican Party. It seems a little bit reminiscent of something I experienced a few years ago when we were talking about the PACT Act. But I don't know. People call me crazy.
Yeah, outrage. Right.
It's outrageous.
Yeah.
Now, how does Paige, I'll start with you. You've been doing this for 25 years almost.
Yeah, 14 years, 15 years, started in 2010. I just want to start by saying thank you. It's not lost on me, on us, that we're on a veterans, we're invited on your veterans platform. I'm not a veteran myself. I'm a wife. I'm an ex-wife of a special forces guy, twice married, twice divorced. Same guy.
Are you sure you weren't in the military?
I'm at. We're friendly. He's your biggest fan. It's not lost on me. I don't know how many non-veterans you have probably have few, if not Zero.
We've had a few on the
Okay.
program. Absolutely. It's what we have noticed in the space is that, a lot of advocates are, the dependents of the veteran and watching the veteran go down, this wicked hole or their health decline. And they end up being their biggest advocates standing up for them.
Well, I appreciate it. We're veterans of our own battle, but it's been it's been my hill that I will die on this hill. Until this past week, I haven't lost a battle I've been involved in this arena in non-intoxicating hemp, non-intoxicating CBD. I know CBD is just a catchphrase, but we're just going to call it that. It's much more than that now. So the Coalition for Access Now is the consumer voice, work in DC, and we've been pushing legislation for 14 years. Initially the movement started with children. It was pediatric epilepsy. We now represent 46 to 50 million Americans take a daily dose of CBD. So 50 million Americans now from patient zero take this every single day. Yeah. And the work that was just done with hours of information beforehand through Congress by 2 members of Congress was they undo all of that work, 14 years of work. It affects 50 million people. It preempts 50 states federally. So I know Texas doesn't stand for that kind of stuff. So I work on this. It's what I eat, sleep, every single day. I've been doing this. I don't have a reason anymore. Charlotte died in 2020 with COVID, likely. But her story was a huge success. This was a resolution for her very rare, untreatable by pharmaceutical seizure disorder. And it worked for 9.5 years. No drugs, no pharmaceuticals, no hospital trips. So while it ended in a tragedy, and I don't have a child that I fight for access for this, I just do it because I know I've seen too much. I know too much. It's worth, I was asked and I said yes. And I won't quit, and I haven't failed. And so that's who we're representing now. Now, probably pediatric epilepsy is the smallest percentage of the population of those 50 million Americans. Veterans, chronic pain, seniors, professional athletes, that's the larger, people who just use it for sleep and wellness, that's the largest. However, that high medical needs state that Stephanie represents here in Texas, that I started this fight representing is probably, it's impactful because it's the origin. It's impactful because it's life or death. And the majority of those dozens of millions of Americans, it's quality of life, which is just as important. But for our kids, life or death. And you cannot tell us you're removing a valid, efficacious treatment. Probably the 2 populations of people I would not want to get in the middle of is a mother and a child with intent to harm, and between a veteran and a solution, or an armed military, and that's exactly what just happened. And so I'm really proud to work with you at Grunt Style. I'm wearing your T-shirt that was made for Coalition because this absolutely impacts. You guys are using these products. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's a benign, non-intoxicating anti-inflammatory. No one has explained why this is being removed from your arsenal.
It's diabolical. It's diabolical. Like, I don't understand it. Right? Anecdotally, I started using CBD lotion, right, for my hands because I have rheumatoid arthritis that is just so goddamn painful, right? And I'm not going to take any biological injection or any of these big pharma things, right? And I have found that CBD lotion, hand lotion, is the most effective for my rheumatoid arthritis. And now that's going to be illegal. It's going to be a scheduled drug that I will no longer have access to, and I will have to go inject myself with some poison that big pharma is going to make a bunch of money off me and looking at me as a profit margin, and then looking at me as some sort of, anything other than that. I think that's diabolical. It's diabolical. Stephanie, you've been, representing the families here in Texas, in a lot of the advocacy work that you are doing. Tell us how you've got involved in the fight for CBD.
Well, I mean, it's a very intertwined story between Paige and I. So I have a now 17-year-old son. His name is Reagan, and he has epilepsy. He had his first seizure in 2012 and had brain surgery. For the seizures, they considered his epilepsy to be very catastrophic. So brain surgery he failed multiple pharmaceutical drugs. And so they had shared with us that brain surgery was probably the best option. He had his brain surgery 6 weeks after his original, so he went from having 2 seizures the first day to 4 the next day to 7. So we were just ramping up, and we're grateful that surgery was potentially an option for us. It isn't always for people with certainly rare genetic forms of epilepsy. And he was seizure-free after his brain surgery for about 16 months. And we were still riding that high of feeling like we had overcome a seizure disorder when my husband and I were watching CNN one night. And there was a documentary called Weed that Sanjay Gupta had put together. And it was about Paige and her daughter, Charlotte, and just what remarkable results they were getting from using non-psychoactive, full-spectrum, hemp-based CBD. And at the time, we were just watching it because it was about a little girl with epilepsy. And again, our son was doing great at that point. But my husband was like, we should write their name down. Like, we should write these good people in Colorado that are doing amazing work for these families. And I did. I wrote it down on a Post-it note and just
You're probably regretting that decision.
Put it on my desk. And not but a month later, I was sitting at Dallas Children's Hospital because Reagan's seizures had started back. And the only thing that the doctors at that point knew to tell me, now that we'd already had brain surgery, was, well, let's just start all the pharmaceutical drugs back up. And I was just like, but they didn't work before. Why would they work now? And so I called my husband and said, go find that Post-it and give me that number. Give me that name and I'll find it.
Yeah.
And that very same day, I called up to a nonprofit organization that is sort of a shoot off of where Charlotte and her story started, called Realm of Caring. And I just said, I need what you have. And their question was, well, where do you live? Because at this point they were getting inundated, right? Like inundated after that documentary on CNN happened with all these families from all across our nation saying, but it's not available to me where I live. So what do I have to do? And the answer was, well, are you moving here? And
right.
What family really is in a position to pick up and upheaval their own families, their jobs, everything, to just move to get access to medicine? But there were so many that did, and Paige hosted many at her house.
That is one of my favorite stories. Whenever I am honored enough to hear Paige speak about a lot of the beginnings, is like that is one of the most astounding. Like the belief that this was changing so many lives, that she had opened the door of her house and was taking strangers in for a period of time just to get access to this. Yes. Like, my God.
Sleeping in her guest room.
Right.
Well, and just to level set, 2012, this was a Schedule I substance. And the year we're talking about, this is before Texas had a law. This is before the federal government descheduled this. This is a Schedule I substance. So you had to have an address in Colorado. You had to live in the state, and then it couldn't travel outside of the state. You'd be drug trafficking a Schedule I drug.
We totally were.
So that's why they had to live in the state of Colorado. So I gave them 48 hours each family. I said, 48 hours. You can live in my, you can sleep on a couch, or you're okay with you have 48 hours, and then the next family was coming in just to give them a soft landing place. Yeah. One family lived with me for a year. Pregnant, had more children. But it was, I just have that do unto others, or that empathy, or whatever the word is. I was in that position, and I didn't have help. I didn't have much help, and I just went and found it. And so it's easy to turn around and reach back and see what someone's going through and just ease a little bit of that burden.
Yeah.
And but it was like a race of a movement, and it was a mothers and fathers movement. You do not get in between a parent and a dying child. I can't think of a more fearful place to stand.
We came out in August, right, of 2013, and I flew down. I flew up with Reagan in November of 2013. We were on a waiting list because at that point the list was so long for access to
15,000.
I mean,
children were on a waiting list
for epilepsy based.
For pediatric.
Yes, because that's what the documentary. The documentary was not just about Charlotte, but
right.
But a majority of the families that were, what were we calling them?
Medical hemp refugees.
Yes,
Or it wasn't even hemp, it was medical marijuana refugees. The media was calling them. But it's 15,000. And I was one of the founders of Realm of Caring, which is a wonderful C3, 501c3. It's up and running. And it was really just initially started to help what's a good zip code to live? Where am I supposed to put my kid in school? How do I get on the state Medicaid waiver? It's much more than that now, but it was just how do we help these people?
Yeah.
On that waiting list, as their number came up, if they had an address and a residency, their name would come up. Your oil is ready, and there were. I mean, it was very, in a way, unethical. I have to call these people. I go down the list. Your oil is ready. Are you living in Colorado? Well, Johnny died last week. Go on to the next name, and that's how, like, it was heavy.
Yeah.
And that is not lost on me. The memory of that, a trauma or whatever you want to call it, that heaviness is still very real. It's just the messaging has changed. I think people have forgotten that original consumer, and it was a difficult, dark, light but difficult time for people.
Well, and a very scary time. I mean, I think that's so we. Got on the waiting list, and Reagan took his first dose of CBD at the beginning of January of 2014, and he was seizure-free, completely seizure-free by April of 2014, so about 3 months. Yeah. And I mean, that was a lot of watching and waiting and being scared and maybe deciding, like, maybe we shouldn't do this. Like, this isn't working. Like, and we were having to go up to Colorado. I mean, we were breaking the law. Breaking the law. And I was worried every day that Child Protective Services would show up at our
Yeah. I mean, that's a real question I want to ask. Like, as a parent myself, right, I would do absolutely anything, right? And, what was watching, what had inspired you, you picked up and you moved all the way and you did all the things.
Oh, I didn't move. I did not move. I stayed right here and broke the law.
Oh, well, even better.
And felt really good about
that part out.
Really felt good about that. But in all of that process, got to meet Paige, like, at a coffee house in Colorado, just on one of my trips up there.
Yeah.
But I mean, immediately knew that I was just lucky enough to be part of a group of people that had found relief for my child. And again, not all children, they weren't all children, but certainly the ones that were rushing were families that had medically fragile children that had tried everything else that was available to them through their doctors and pharmaceutically, and had failed all of that and just still needed something. So when it was working, when Reagan became seizure-free at that beginning part of 2014, it was right when there was starting to be talk about the fact that here in the state of Texas, that there was going to be a bill in the legislature that year that had to do with CBD access. And although it started very narrow with just people with intractable epilepsy that had failed 2 drugs, you had to have failed 2 drugs, and then have 2 different doctors sign off. I had reached out to the Epilepsy Foundation here in Texas, mostly to just say, hey, like, let me tell you a secret. It's actually working. And I don't know whether anybody else here in Texas is doing this, but I'm doing it the way it shouldn't be done. but it's working.
Yeah.
I just want to tell you that. And as a result of having some conversations with them, started to sort of lead the charge organically with families here that just wanted to set up family days for us to go to the state capitol, to set up visits with the legislators, both senators and representatives, to just show them what our families deal with on a day-to-day basis, and to let them know that this mattered. It really mattered. That when you've tried everything else and nothing else is working and your child is dying, actively dying, that you need some hope. And we knew, everyone knew that CBD was not going to be a silver bullet. Like, it might work for you, it might not work for you, but you certainly deserved the opportunity to try.
Yeah.
And so I worked with the Epilepsy Foundation on that, subsequently joined their board. But as a result, I mean, access to CBD here, was, again, very small when we started in 2015, grew in 2019 to add so many more diagnoses, PTSD specifically for veterans, cancer, lots of other neurological diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So, I'm proud of the work that we did that started, again, with just a couple of moms with really sick kids with epilepsy, but it's so much more than that now. And the fact that we are 10 years later from where we were when we started this fight here in Texas for us, the fact that I still had to go back to go to Austin this year to fight the same battle that we fought back in, 2015 is just outrageous to me. It's just ridiculous. And Paige has come on a plane to Texas so many times. And here she is again today, here to just tell the story of, something that started very small is now accessible to so many, and yet we're having it pulled back federally, and it's such a shame.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that where I was going with the question was, like, as a parent, and you're watching, you've come to that last moment of, like, I've tried everything, and now I'm gonna try some really risky shit, right? And but you're watching it have this amazing result, right? And you want to tell everybody in the world, but you can't because it's illegal, right? I'd say the reason why I want to just talk a little briefly about that is because I'm seeing the same thing around the psychedelics aspect of, like, people are finding refuge in this stuff, but they can't talk about it because it's illegal, but it's saving so many people's lives. In what we're you mentioned a moment ago, like, hey, I want to let you in on a little secret, right? But, like, how frustrating at that time was it for you here in Texas? Because there's a lot of people in the state here that are anti-cannabis. A lot of evangelicals, big alcohol industry in the state pretty much runs everything in the politics of all. When you're watching the profound effects of this having positiveness on your child, and you can't talk about it, how were you getting the message out? What were you doing?
I certainly was leading the charge of families that wanted it. I did not testify in front of the Senate. Paige came down, and back in 2015, Paige came down, and there were many families that felt comfortable doing that. I was worried for our family's safety to go ahead and say what I was doing, just because I felt like there was going to be such a tight noose on that story. But I certainly shared it with those that needed to hear that their fight in Austin was worth it.
Yeah.
It was working for my son, and they deserved the opportunity to try for their child. So that, I think, was the hardest part, was to have to keep my mouth shut. I certainly feel more comfortable these days telling that story than I did back then. But it was scary.
Yeah,
it was scary.
Yeah, sometimes I appreciate that, because there's our conversations that we have here at the Grunt South Foundation that are so, I feel sometimes out in the wild, and you feel like totally exposed, and like, wow, like there's some really big darkness around these topics, and there's so much money involved in these in the way that these things are being pushed around. It's like, wow, man, like who would have ever thought it would be this dirty when all it is that like these are things that are out there that can be helpful to people, that can change people's outcomes, and it's wrapped up in so much crap, right? That it's people are dying. People are dying because they don't have the access. But that things started to change. Legislation started coming into place, right? And then the accessibility started becoming more profound, or not profound, but more available. But as the availability became larger, I think the conflation of like CBD and hemp started, and marijuana started to now fill the space. How has that led us to where we are today, to where now we have politicians that are up on the Capitol that are talking out of their ass, don't have any understanding of the difference between these things, but are making it so muddy so that they're confusing the population? I mean, that's one man's opinion. Love to hear your guys'.
Well, and I'll go back just a tad. The Coalition for Access Now is a 501c4 based in DC. It started, initially just to get these families, God bless you, out of my house. We went back state by state. So we went and fought in 50 states and won and helped 50 states pass a mess of a patchwork of as fast as possible for CBD access. If a state wanted full medical cannabis and that was the fastest path, terrific. And we just wanted people to move back home. These are families that were split, most of them who weren't breaking the law, were split in half, and the breadwinner stayed home, and one parent came with the child and lived in the state of Colorado. But we just wanted them to be able to live. So most of the states were, you can have CBD access, you can have access to, and it wasn't called CBD back then, it was cannabidiol. The acronym came out of children using this. They said you can have it and possess it in Georgia, for example, but we don't want to know how you got it here, how you traveled across state lines with a Schedule I substance and your child, but you can possess it without prosecution. And those were some of the most strict state laws. Mm-hmm. So we helped in 50 states. We went to the federal government in the early days with the coalition and said, we need you to do two things. We need this to be descheduled. This should not be a controlled substance, a Schedule I controlled substance. And simultaneously, and this is the most important part, but the maybe most boring part for most people, but the most important part is regulation. Yeah. Deschedule and regulate. So the early federal bills were those twofold. And this is a energy and commerce jurisdiction and a HELP committee jurisdiction. This is an FDA. This belongs at the FDA. And we had movement, we had momentum, we had bills dropping each different Congress. I think it started in the 113th, 114th Congress, those first bills. So it's legal in 50 states. The government agrees it's completely apolitical, bipartisan. Everyone agreed to do it. It was just, it can take 15 years to pass a bill with 1 to 5% chance of passing a federal bill. They got it done. They got the first part one, and they descheduled this in the Farm Bill in 2018. But they never finished, in 7 years, they never finished that regulation component, which in my opinion is the most important, was urgency and access. But then very tied to that is regulation. How is this regulated? How is this going to be tested and reported on? And what's on the label? And they never got that done. They never finished what they started in the Farm Bill. And so for 7 years, we've been writing this part two into their own standalone bills. But because everyone had access in all 50 states, multiple countries, and then federally in the United States, they had access. So we didn't have that loud urgency of, I would like to move home. I would like my kid to have access before they die. They had access. It was a free-for-all. So from patient zero to 50 million people, from one company to 4,000 CBD companies. No one was crying about access anymore. And I said, that cautionary tale, what can we all just imagine what's going to happen without some form of regulation? Some asshole's going to make some product and someone's going to get very hurt or sick or die. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening. Yeah. So now, for the first time, in my experience in 14 years, is we're in a defensive position, which I'm not good at. I'm not familiar with this. We were racing forward, passing the baton, high five, quick. 4 states ahead, this many countries ahead of the schedule. And now we're in a defensive position, trying to re-educate and explain and remind everybody that this is the consumer's voice is not being heard. It's all about, to your point, money.
Yeah.
It's all about the word non-intoxicating, intoxicating. Everyone hates that word. That's their issue. That was their issue in Texas. My kid was intoxicated on every drug she failed. She was taking barbiturates and opiates.
I mean, Reagan couldn't remember.
No one cared about that because it was approved and it was a drug and it was a pharmaceutical and they were making
the doctor
money.
gave it to them.
Well, there's in the state of Texas, when we just recently went through this whole circumstance and shenanigans, right? There was an individual that was working with Dan Patrick that was very voiceful about his position on anti CBD product, or being in that anti position, and it comes to find out, as this whole thing is advancing and they're trying to save face off of what Dan Patrick had did, and they started changing the way the teacup would be, and all the things that are happening in Texas cannabis legislation. This guy ends up finding himself on the board of Teacup, right? And he is an anesthesiologist at his day job. So in his day job, he's giving out opioids, and now he wants to be on the Teacup board. If that isn't corruption, I don't know what is. And then you find out, not only does that corruption exist, but also the people that are, paying into their political actions are all of big pharma and the alcohol industry, specifically here to the state of Texas, right? It's very tied to a couple, 2 or 3 of the distributors here. So these are. It is clear it is industry versus industry, right? And some of the things that are I think that are adding to that as fact is you're in a state of Texas, 40% loss in alcohol revenue in 2025. That's huge. That's
It's
a big
changing.
effect, right?
Yeah. Times are
Younger
changing.
consumers are not wanting to engage with the spirits, right? They're finding different alternative ways of escapism, if you will, or even medical treatment to get away from of those bigger, more addictive drugs, right? Imagine, if you will, that the big pharma has to create a drug to get you off the drug they created. That's called Suboxone. So, we're the collateral damage, the consumer. I think that's why it was such an organic. It wasn't intended. We are not activists. It wasn't intended, but these pediatric special needs children have no financial interest or gain, and it was.
And we didn't want it.
And
right?
we didn't.
I
I
didn't
didn't
want
yeah.
anything with Delta-8, right? You can't send your child to school.
We're just constantly
on
collateral
something that's
damage.
giving them any sort of
right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part of the challenge here is for our audience, I would imagine, because I struggle with it. It's what is THCA? What is THC? What is Delta-8? What is Delta-9? What is what are all these things that are now, all these different scientific nomenclature for cannabis, right?
Yeah.
And it came because of the obscurities of what you talked about and the second part of the farm bill that they just closed the loop. Now we have all these things, right?
And most people don't want to have to care or want to know that information. Right. And they wouldn't have to if we just had some sensible FDA regulation.
Right. Absolutely. And, I think with the way that this was done, again, it is clear that the federal government is not serious about it. Right. They're just playing games. They're using this as political collateral for whatever behind the curtains, gamesmanship or brinksmanship that is happening. And the fallout again is the people that desperately need this stuff, and that is beyond reproach. But we have seen this over and over again. Sharing with you before the program, Mitch McConnell did the same thing during the PACT Act, right? He pulled the rug out from underneath everybody, put a gun to the legislator at the legislative body at the 11th hour, clearly demonstrating to the veteran community, hey, we don't give a shit about you. And at that point, myself, Will Wisner, and Rosie Torres, and a handful of other people, there was so much death that we had seen of people that are dying on the way to get this piece of legislation passed, that for them to just carelessly pull that shenanigan at the last moment. Same thing here. I mean, we got 300 and some days left to figure this out, and what's that going to look like? Does anybody know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. There's a plan. There's a strategy. So it's not all of outrage and hopelessness. The bills are written, cooked, authored. They're on everybody's desk. They're ready to go. It honestly, like I said, it's supported. It's bipartisan. It's supported by everyone involved. If this thing that happened in the government opening bill last week had public support and public opinion, a debate, a conference, it would have never passed.
Right.
This was done by 2 members of Congress. And so that's why they did it that way. That's not how our country works. Correct. I don't know how you talk about the McConnell Pact issue with a straight without, I don't know how you don't blow up talking about that. I've worked with Will in DC and at various state capitals, and Congress talks a lot about the burn pit veterans. It's heartbreaking. I can't imagine. I'm too old, probably. What's the cutoff age for joining? I'm not going to join the military. You're welcome. Everyone's welcome. I'm 52, so there's no chance. That ship has sailed. But if I were to have, and that was my job, as you man this pit. I would do my job, and then to just be thrown under the bus with illness or facing near imminent death with some illness from the work that you did by doing your job. I don't know how you don't stand up and fight for those people. We are. It's heartbreaking. We cry, and I work with people we don't cry. I don't have emotion. I don't cry. I just go to work. I work with killers. I joke around, the guys I work with are the most serious people. I'm not starting a trade group. I want to be fired. I will fire myself. I want to finish this work and be done. And then everyone else can come in and continue further that work and keep it open, keep access and regulation open. The people I work with are serious guys, and to watch them have to leave the room in tears, to hear what you guys are going through, have gone through, to see your friends die, to see your brothers and sisters die. I feel like that symbiosis of what we go through. It's easy. It's not a fight. It's not a battle for me. It's just easy. I think it would be unethical to not do it. I think there's something wrong if you've seen what you've seen and then not go in and do something to fix it. And so there is a strategy and a plan. And I know everyone with the CBD hemp ban last week is running for the hills to go reorganize and write another bill and find another author. The bills exist. Take your pick. It's a buffet of stuff in Congress. They want to get something done. I think that nobody on the Hill, the President Trump administration, the FDA, HHS, and all of Congress, I think nobody had any idea of the outcry of what just happened. I think they were probably hopeful this would just slip under the cover of night and go away. They would love to never have to see, no offense, me, you. They would love to have to never see us again.
Yeah, it was, but it was such like an out of left field thing, right? That nobody would have anticipated seeing that coming, because all the signals.
They shoved it.
Yeah,
they shoved it in.
They shoved it. They couldn't be debated.
It had to
couldn't
be
be talked. Right.
President Trump had to pass that.
Yeah,
he should be outraged.
And what we've seen up until this moment in time was this, signals coming from the administration that there was going to be some sort of easement on marijuana-based legislation, if that was a descheduling moment or, a complete complete descheduling and going into full regulation. Like, it was an open opportunity, right? And there's a lot of conversation. Now it looks like there is like a schism within party that is happening. And that, again, we're all just being caught in the crossfire of it all.
Well, the president truthed out that video, if you saw it. And it was CBD seniors. This could be the most impactful solution for seniors.
Yeah.
And he put it on Truth. social, and that was not an accident.
Right. Everything he does is
Yeah, nothing. There's no accident. So that it wasn't a signal. It's not a total mystery. I think the administration is probably outraged over having to sign that with this stuffed in there. That's not how this works in America. It's America.
This is America, right? 70% of the population that, in the most recent poll, I think it was a Gallup's poll that came out right after or right before all this was being discussed. 70% of the population doesn't want this.
Yeah.
Right. They just want regulation.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's another part of this weirdness of like the conflation of, all these different classifications of hemp and cannabis. The way that these legislators frame it is like these businesses are operating illegally already. Like they don't have to go through all these scientific lab studies on their product to bring it to market. That's not to say that that some are getting through, right? But largely, in the majority of these cases, these are ethical businesses that are bringing quality product that's lab tested, to the pack weight of less than 0.3 on THC, all that stuff.
Is Reagan? Are you buying Reagan's solution, his treatment at an illicit gas station?
No.
or did you do your consumer work and say, how do I want this done? Do you have rigid standards?
Well, and in fact, for as hard as I personally fought for this legislation back in 2015 and getting our teacup program set up, because that was, to your point, like we were just looking for the fastest route, listening and working with the legislators about what can get passed, right? And it was different state to state on which could get passed.
Well, and it was hemp plus, or I call it marijuana light. It wasn't actually even just a hemp.
It wasn't even
more.
hemp.
It was
like
a little bit more.
Our teacup program allows more than hemp. However, my son had been on the same product from the same original place that we got it in Colorado, which now is just considered sort of a consumer product, right? I'm not having to get it through a dispensary. We don't have to have a red card. None of that exists anymore because of just access to a larger population of people. But I get asked quite often, well, if all of this went away, right? Like, what do you care? Because at least you got teacup. Well, I don't know how you feel about your CBD lotion and what's worked for you, but you don't try to fix what's not broken. So he's been at this point 10 years plus of being seizure free and on the same product that he started with. So I'm not willing to take the risk of putting him on a different product, right? Even though I know that everything that is covered in our teacup program is wonderfully regulated. Our state does a good job at that. However, I'm not willing to change what he's been on for so many years that works for him.
Yeah.
So you sort of stick with what works. And what happened in Washington, D.C. last week directly affects my ability to get him what he needs to live his best life.
Yeah. He's got his driver's license.
Right?
But it's not your doctor telling you, we need to switch medications. It's the government's telling you where you can spend your money.
Right.
No.
That does not sound like a republic.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
That sounds very much like a dictatorship.
Yeah.
Or something that's controlling your ability to participate in a free market and make your own choices. Right. And that's what I think this really comes down to is, you can, for anybody listening there, like there's a lot of people out there that are contrary to this belief that their belief that marijuana has no medical capabilities, yada yada yada.
And that's fine. And they shouldn't use it then, right? Probably.
Absolutely. But that should not limit one's ability to gain access to it because they believe that they do have medical principles and qualities to it. So. I find it, quite interesting that we live in at a time, 2025. I watch Cops a lot with my wife. It's just a fun show, right? And we laugh almost every night about all the people that have been locked up on that television show for like a couple nuggets of marijuana in a bag, right? And you're like, man, 1990s was hard for people, like getting locked up for a little bit of marijuana, right? Here we are today, understanding the principles of what these things are doing for the impact of the individual's life outside of just a recreational drug, from PTSD to TBI. I mean, I personally give cannabis all the recognition in the world for getting me off psychotropics. Right, that saved my life, and nobody will ever change that opinion for me. Right, but we're in this world today that, we're, again, because of money, politics, and power, and all these ugly things, we're willing to let people die. Literally, let people die because we don't want them to have access to something that, you can't put a patent on because it grows out of the ground.
But it works to bring the voices forward. But they're sick and they're dying, and so it's hard to amplify that. And that's what you're doing with your platform. That's what I'm trying to do, is just amplify that voice of people who, they would hope they would go away. The government would hope that they would quiet down, and they're there.
Yeah.
We'll handle this for you. Yeah. And that's not how it works. For me as a consumer, I decide, I say. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're trying to do, is just we were right. What we found was this great big experiment, and then it turns out we were right. And this is an anti-epileptic. It's an anti-inflammatory. We took the data from the first 1,000 kids, shared it with a company in England, and they, lo and behold, made a seizure drug for Dravet syndrome. Yeah. For Charlotte's condition. It's a pharmaceutical. Awesome. More tools in the toolbox. And if I could sum up what I'm trying to do, put tools in, harmless, safe, effective tools in people's toolbox. And that validated everything we did. It worked. Yeah. And it's now considered the world's greatest phase 3 clinical trial. Yeah. I mean, it's not, but I mean, our use of CBD is the world's largest phase 3 clinical trial in human history. And it's millions of people taking various doses, various products, harmless, and being collateral damage to some bad actors. If you're making grapes into alcohol, you're fermenting grapes and making alcohol, and someone gets drunk and drinks too much and gets injured, you don't ban the fruit. You regulate the alcohol. Right. Maybe that's a bad analogy, but that's what they're doing. That's what they're trying to do. We are smart enough to figure out how to regulate it. We have track records in other states with state models that have done just that. Yeah. We know how to do this. This is your job. You're a lawmaker. Yeah. Make law. The arguments in the opposite side of it are just so incredibly disingenuous too. It's like, well, these CBD stores are within 400 feet of a school. The last time I checked, so is a gas station that sells alcohol and a Walgreens and all of it. These are just all the things that are being put up, the shenanigans that we had to endure here in the state of Texas with Dan Patrick, eat a dick. It was just outrageous. It was outrageous. And, the antics, you'd stand up there and throw bags of CBD at the camera we're the criminals that are just trying to find a way that we don't get addicted to another substance. And he wasn't mentioning your veterans are using this for health. He didn't mention the categories of people who were using this to resolve their own health issues. And it was like a drama. It was just like political theater. Yeah. It's embarrassing to watch for Texas. Loving Texas, it was embarrassing to watch. Yeah.
Well, here's the beautiful part is Dan Patrick's not Texan. He's a transplant that brought his bullshit from somewhere else.
So are you going to run? Are you going to run?
He's going to run.
Are you going to run?
Not me. I'm not a politician. I don't have the chops for that. I have too much character. I guess he's running again here. So, thank God for Governor Abbott, right? That stood stalwart on the wall there and said, "You know what? I see how impactful this is for the population of my state." And
and he has over and over again. Yeah. I mean, just I've been blessed to have stood in his office when he's signed different pieces of legislature that affect our family and my son. And not just about CBD. We had legislation about making sure that the school educators are trained in seizure first aid and seizure awareness. That passed back at, I want to say that was 2019 too. But he has stood up for people who want and need help over and over again across multiple populations. And so every time that he brings a pen to paper, and watching him do that for all of us.
And also Senator Ted Cruz was another champion last week. And
Unsuspecting.
Unsuspecting.
I would have never
Thank
would
you.
have.
Yep.
I'm not a big Patrick of Ted Cruz. Him and I have had our clashings, but I will say thank you for that one. That was I was not expecting that, but we need every voice. Right, we need every voice in this conversation. It doesn't matter what side of the political aisle. This is, again, like I think the population of this country is quickly coming to this idea that these paradigms of left versus right are really what's causing the problems in our country, and that if we really just start addressing the problems as Americans and looking at like how does this affect my neighbor, like I think we're getting to that point now because the shenanigans that are happening in government are just outrageous. And with that being said, where we're at today, the Senate has passed this, this whole thing. Everything's signed, the ink is dry. The president's doing his thing now. How do we affect change moving forward?
So there's a multi-step process. So this CR deadline is January 30th, and it starts all over again. So we have language in place that everyone has. It's on everyone's desk until then. January 31st, whether our new substitution to this Representative Harris, Senator McConnell, CBD hemp ban, whether that's taken up or not, we have a representative in the House that is the champion for this, and that bill's written, and it was released as a draft intentionally to kick the whole thing to the FDA, and it was released as a draft to gain public input. That work is ongoing. We've been working on this for quite some time with Representative Griffith, and that will continue whether or not they substitute this McConnell language. We'll have less than a year. What is it today? 359, 360, wherever we're at, days to pass a federal bill. They need to hear from people that this matters, their personal story, that this matters to their life, and it's it's gonna be a fast, hard, long year. But I know we are in all the four corners of the right. We are ethically, we are medically, this is harmless. We are in all four corners. Everybody wants regulation. This solves every problem. This removes the bad actors. This would preserve access for the consumer. And I haven't heard any pushback on this piece of legislation. Also, I mean, if you could sit and dream up the perfect author of an FDA CBD bill, it would be probably the chairman of the Committee of Jurisdiction. And that's who wrote the bill. Representative Morgan Griffith is the chair of E&C, Energy and Commerce Subhealth. It's his committee. He's the chairman.
Yeah.
So we can go find other authors and write other bills, but that is the most powerful position to author that bill. And he authored the bill before he was put into that chair. He's also on the Rules Committee. Every single bill that passes crosses his desk. And so that's a very powerful position. That's why I have confidence. I have confidence in my team. I've worked with them for a very long time. I have confidence in the consumer voice. I don't pay politicians to when I lobby them. We don't fund them. We just have the right. We have the valid right to get this done, and it works. And it has not failed in 14 years. I just think people, I don't know. I guess what is the average reason people don't call their senators and congressmen? Is it apathy? Is it fear? Is it I just don't think they want to hear from me. But that's how our country works. I have watched it work. You have watched it work. And it is hard to get a veto in Austin, Texas, in any state. You guys we killed a bill that had a lot of pressure and money behind it. We did it in Florida as well. We got a veto amend in Virginia, and we killed the bill. We amended it. Governor Youngkin went in and amended the bill to more positive regulatory language. They signed it, and they passed it, and Governor Youngkin signed it. It's very hard to get a veto. So I have a lot of confidence. I have a lot of reasons to have confidence. I can guarantee that nothing's going to happen if we don't reach out. If the average millions of Americans do not reach out with their reason why they care, that this is accessible, I guarantee you we're going to fail.
Yeah.
But we have a very good chance of winning if we contact our members.
Well, and Coalition for Access Now does a really great job of making it very easy, right? There's a link, you put your zip code in, it will sort of pre-populate a standard email that just discusses the topic. If you don't want to put your own story in it, but I can promise you that your personal story about why CBD matters to you really pulls at the heartstrings of all of those that are sitting.
We say this all the time, but it's been told to me for a very long time. It's 60 is the number of letters, calls, outreach a senator or a Congress person has to hear from a constituent. 60. Till that's a top of their pile issue. That is like a major 60. Right. Maybe that's encouraging, or maybe that's depressing, but that's all. And if we call on the telephone, it's probably 100 times. It's probably 6,000 equals to 6,000 outreaches. It's much more impactful to use a telephone, but it's harder.
I don't think people really appreciate, to your earlier point, you mentioned, how long it takes to get legislation passed in the United States, on average about 15 years.
About 15 years.
Right? We saw that very easily with the PACT Act, right? It was about 13. That was accelerated.
Yeah,
right?
That's quick.
So, I mean, it's, guys, like this is predicated, all this is predicated by your engagement, like sending, you heard it from Paige, 60 responses to a representative or senator is going to spark some sort of action from these individuals. And it is policy for any representative in the United States that if they receive correspondence, they have to return correspondence. So you will receive an answer one way or the other. It might be a form document, it might be a actual response, but you're going to receive something. And there's probably some level of fear, right, in the way that our government has been operating over the last few years. Like there's not a lot of reason for people to reach out because they have not provided a very safe environment for people to have a voice against government these days. When you got the president of the United States saying we're going to nuke anybody in America that's going to stand up against us, or I can shoot anybody in the street. Like you get it from everywhere.
Or maybe that's why we need to be louder.
That's where I'm at.
But that's
right?
where I'm at. Yeah.
This is America. We are Americans, and we have this wonderful document called the Constitution of the United States, which does not give the power of the government. It gives the power of the people. And sometimes I think we forget a lot of that. And certainly it's moments like these where I think the politicians forget what their constituency is actually talking about and what is important.
We gave them that job.
Yep, that's right. And, we could take it away very easily through voting, recall, right? I would, if I was in the state of Kentucky, I would recall that son of a bitch McConnell because he's done nothing but stand in. The guy's 85 years old. The guy falls over more than he votes on stuff. Like this is ridiculous.
Well, Kentucky also has the biggest champion, which is Senator Paul. Also,
it's
very interesting
right?
politically.
I just did a Q&A with Rand Paul. About a week and a half ago on this very subject. There are many faces that are out there championing and talking about this. That means that you can be too, and it doesn't take much. A letter, there's a lot of influencers out there that talk about a lot of things. This is a very important subject. I challenge you to talk about it, make this popular, get this circulating around the internet. Because if we lose something like this, we go back to like 2005 and we look at the opioid circumstances in this country, right? And the amount of addiction that was happening in the United States. That's not to say that that hasn't subsided, but the volume is not what it was in those years. Because we have alternative modalities that are emerging, right? We have data that is emerging around these modalities that are saying, wow, like cannabis, the receptors in your body are actually open to cannabinoids that reduce pain and inflammation. Who fucking knew?
Like sometimes things come from nature,
right?
Like, woo,
Yeah.
how could that be possible?
There's more studies that are coming out. I've been citing this one a lot. HBOT for Heroes out of North Carolina released their 3-year study on hyperbaric oxygen chamber therapy. They had over 100 veterans in this program, and all veterans completed it. By the end of that study, 57% of all participants said that they had reduced suicidal ideation. Wow. Why? Because they had been reducing their inflammation, which was causing pain, which caused them to get on pain-addicting pills and led them to suicidal ideations. Right, so much like CBD, which you identified in the early data of this, is by reducing inflammation in the human body, you reduce a lot of the problems that stems medically from those things. So like that to me is the biggest part here. Is like I've been chasing inflammation in my own medical endeavors of trying to hack my own stuff, and by reducing inflammation in me, I've seen a huge response in the way that my body reacts. So, I mean, I think that stuff is real. And there's a lot of science that points to that. The emerging data that's coming out of these modalities is just continuing to, scratch doctors' heads. The FDA is like continuing with these breakthrough, analyses and studies that are coming out. So it's like, this is just nonsense to close the door on something like this that is having the effect of over 50 million people, finding solace in this stuff.
So this was passed and signed, as you said, by the president, this language that bans it. It goes into effect 365 days from when President Trump signed it. This, in my opinion, is not like, oh, darn it, I guess we had a good run. 14 years. This is a death sentence. This is a medical emergency, a public health crisis. Someone's going to die. Someone's going to get very hurt. Someone's going to die when you pull a treatment from their cupboard that's working with no explanation and no plan B. They can't change their address. We're going to go Australia. We're going to go to Chile.
Right.
Someone's going to get hurt. If this was Charlotte that I was fighting for here today, this is a death sentence. This is the only thing she took for almost a decade, the only thing that worked to stop her epilepsy. This would kill her. So are we going to wait for that to happen? I don't want to even know who that person's going to be. We might know them. I won't stand around and wait for that to happen. So we're racing forward. We need our voices heard. Yeah. We need to be heard.
So we got till January 31st until the next CR needs to be signed. Do you see any opportunity of the McConnell amendment getting ripped out?
We can replace it. We can substitute it. It can be pulled out. It's still a bill that kicks us to the FDA still must pass. So even if we clean this up on agapropes, it still must be a law through regular order, through the regular process. And so whether they change that or not, I'm still racing forward with the final solution, I call it. What
are some of the challenges that you see inside the FDA around this?
The conversations I've had, they think this is, unofficial conversations. This is a no-brainer. This is too easy. This needs to be regulated. We already feel we have the authority to do that. Some members of the FDA feel they want additional authority, and that's why it's in a bill. Mm-hmm. That's why it's in another bill, to give the FDA additional authority. At the very least, we've been saying for years, this should be regulated like a dietary supplement, like melatonin. Yeah. Third-party testing, so you have a clear, accurate confidence and a clear label severe adverse event reporting at the least. They want a couple more things. They want age gating. The FDA wants age gating of CBD. They want possibly a pregnancy warning on the front of the label. Fine. I think the industry, everyone I've talked to is fine with that. The consumers are fine with all of that. And that's what the bill just gives them a little additional authority. The pushback, I know that pharmaceutical companies are pushing back. I don't think they want to compete with a dietary supplement. It's very expensive to get a drug through to market.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they would compete with this being sold as a supplement. However, I feel that that's where it should exist. Unless you have Dravet syndrome, you're not getting that drug. It's now an Irish company. You're not getting that drug unless you have Dravet. And there's 2 other very rare pediatric conditions that you would qualify for a prescription for that.
But certainly not as a veteran.
You're not
Certainly not
stuffing
as a
50 million Americans into that use state. So honestly, the hardest thing is media is not picking up the consumer story. The message is getting conflated between, is this intoxicating? Is this hemp? What is Delta 10? We are not being heard. And the only way to get consumers heard is to make those calls. I know it's difficult. I hate asking people for anything ever. Is to call your 2 senators and your 1 representative in the House.
Yeah. Do you see the DEA and the FDA sparring over this?
I do not. I am in conversations with HHS. My coalition is part of the MAHA movement, and it is apolitical. If people hear that and instantly recoil, Secretary Kennedy we are involved. We're kind of like helping organize the spokes in that wheel. My coalition might be the most controversial thing. It's very benign. It's like clean up food. This is processed food and vaccines.
Dyes and all that stuff.
Really, it's non-controversial what they're trying to do. The media just gets it, gets people, the provocative story and gets people riled up. But it's really sort of benign. We're just trying to clean things up. So they're in agreement in general on how to do this, and that this is their jurisdiction, that this is not Farm Bill staffers are writing final product milligrams, and they have said out loud to us many times, I work in agriculture. I'm writing milligrams in a final product. This is not where this belongs. This is not our jurisdiction. So the FDA would like it to deal with this. There's really, the pushback is just getting a little bit louder than the money, than the voices. If you are reading the news, we are not floating to the top of that message. And that's where it started. It's always been effective. How do you get louder? I guess you ban it so people care and are terrified, and you create a mass panic, and then people care. There's many easier ways before that, but here we are. Yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
So difficult times make strong people.
Yeah, it is it's unfortunate. The shock and awe, is the only real way left in like grabbing mass attention in this country, right? I've seen it over and over again, and insert circumstance, right? And it's happening every day. Well, got a lot of work to do. It's very clear, and it's going to come down to the people again having to organize and get together and do all the work, send the letters, make the calls, inundate your representative and your senator, both at the state and federal level, because we've seen it, down at the county level, to where we've Will Wisner has been defending some of this stuff at the county level in Missouri. It's just completely absurd. So this is going to take everybody. It's going to take a big fight. I think there's some big challenges, some gorillas in the room that we're going to have to look at. And I think it's multifaceted that this is going to have to come from a lot of different angles, right? I see that, probably, the way that I look at it from the Grunstyle Foundation perspective is like, CBD is a safe and practical alternative to any SSRI or psychotropic. And, we have a massive overdosing problem overprescribing problem rather in the veteran community around psychotropics, where people like myself are finding these modalities and getting off of that. A little different in terms of this conversation, what we're talking about, and the severities of it, but nonetheless, the practicalities of use are all the same, and the accessibility of it. And one thing that I will not stand for is to continue to watch veterans of this country die because of they're not getting access to the things that they need to survive. Mm-hmm. And I believe that you guys are on the same path for the Americans of this country just having access to modalities that are going to give them a fighting chance.
And that's why I feel encouraged, because we're working on the same thing. And there's no one I would rather work on something this large and important than the veteran community, the military, and angry, outraged parents. Mm-hmm. So I feel encouraged. I feel confident, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty outrageous.
Yeah.
Like little old CBDs. Come on,
right.
Come on. Good luck with, Toad or whatever we're trying to get legalized, right? Like DMT.
Right. There is a conversation happening in the state of Texas, well, across the country right now, about ibogaine, and this like massively grandfather plant that would rock your life for 19 hours straight. But we can't get past CBD, which is like, come on.
But this sort of creates we set the runway. We're paving the runway for other things to kind of land in a supplement or land through the FDA in a similar way. Maybe they have a harder pull, a harder haul. But if we can't pave the runway for this is the skinniest sliver of all the modalities you're asking for. We have to start here.
Yeah.
This is the easiest thing.
Absolutely.
And we know that grassroots efforts work, right? That your voice matters.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Our roots are pretty deep, though. That first sticky note. I've never heard that story before, actually.
Well, Stephanie, I want to say thank you for sharing and being a great representative for CBD in the state of Texas and nationally, and all the work that you've been doing with Paige. This is I say this all the time, right? This is not the sexy stuff, right? Like, I would much rather be talking about like range day and all the things of like fun and exciting things on these programs. But Gaslighting the Warfighter exists because like we're being fucking lied to over and over and over again in this country by the officials that are representing us. And it is having a demonstrative effect on the mental health of people in this country, and most importantly, their physical health. And that is something that we all have a responsibility towards. And, I think that is why we are in these conversations and utilizing this platform that has the ability to reach so many veterans and so many people. And I'm just grateful that, we have that opportunity. I'm grateful that I get to work along beautiful people like yourself that are doing so much to change the outcomes of circumstances in this country. This is what makes me proud to be an American, right? Is like there are people that give a shit and are willing to go to the end to make sure that other people are taken care of. That's the America I grew up in. That's the America I want to hand over to my children. And I feel that you guys probably share those same sentiments.
Absolutely.
So I want to say again, thank you for the robust conversation. Paige, anything you would like to leave?
I would like to say thank you. I know the honor of being here, not having served in the military. I have one ask. I would like Grunstyle to make more T-shirts for this movement.
Consider it done.
Whether it's this one or something a little, sexier, whatever you guys can dream up. I think you guys should get it out there and have people proud to wear your your gear.
Absolutely.
That'd be awesome.
Well, you had-
Thank you for making this one for me.
Absolutely. And you had time with our designers today, I understand.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that is probably going to be a real thing. And anybody out there at home, if you want to learn more of what Paige and Stephanie are doing, go to Coalition for Access Now. What is the web domain for that?
It's www.coalitionforaccess.org.
There you go. And you'll be able to find all the information of the great work that they're doing. You can find ways of getting involved. You can also go to grunstylefoundation.org and find other ways of getting tied into the work that we're doing around this subject. And there are other organizations that are very involved in the CBD conversation. It doesn't have to start with either of these two groups, right? Find the thing that matters to you. Find the way that you can get yourself into the conversation, and just get involved. There comes a point in America that we all have to stand up and be counted, right? And we have to stand on something that we believe in. For many of us, that's this subject, is the mental and physical health of our countrymen. And I'm just happy to be a part of it. So for me, to you, all of you out there listening, I want to say thank you to our guests. This is the first of many the conversations we'll be having around this throughout the year. So we hope that Paige and Stephanie will be back and we'll having a more positive conversation with some greater results, I hope. And we'll bring that to you later this year. So until then, you know the drill, my friends. Be kind to one another. Wash those stinking hands. And we'll see you again soon.